Hello everyone and welcome to the channel. I'm Emmanuel, I'm an airline pilot, and today we're looking at something very exciting and brand new. In fact, not even released at the very time I'm recording this video, even though it is up for release very shortly, and that is the Eviation Alice by the developer LivtoAir. Now, LivtoAir in the past has not exactly been known for study level add-ons, and obviously this is not one either, but this is a simulation of a prototype aircraft that has flown in the real world and is supposed to enter service in roughly 2027 at this moment. And the Eviation Alice is a purely electrically driven aircraft. There is no conventional fuel in this, it's all battery powered, and at the moment it's simulated to a range of 450 nautical miles with a cruising speed of about 300 knots. Now, if you do fly it a bit slower, the plane will go a little bit further. Service ceiling is flight level 320, and at a high-speed cruise you can reach up to Mach 0.63. And you don't even need 3,000 foot of takeoff or landing distance here. The aircraft is conceived in 3 versions, just like its real counterpart, and that's the commuter version, which is going to feature 9 seats. You have a luxury version with 6 seats, which is the one we are going to fly today. And then you have a cargo version, which is capable of transporting approximately 2,000 pounds of cargo and baggage combined. And this cargo version is what makes the plane so interesting for real-world operators, as there have been over 200 already ordered by companies like DHL. So, very interesting type of aircraft. It's made its first flight towards the end of 2022, on the 27th of September 2022. And during that flight, the flight data was unfortunately not as great as they initially hoped it would be. So the version we have here from LivtoAir is based on the manufacturer's original specification, as they are somewhat redeveloping the aircraft as we speak in order to meet those specifications by the time that it goes into service. So overall, a very interesting concept of an aircraft, and I really can't wait to fly the first all-electric aircraft on this channel today. But first, let's go ahead and start having a look at the aircraft itself. So you've already seen what it looks like from the outside, and how about we just head over to the inside now, because this is what the flight deck looks like. As you can see, it's a rather simplistic flight deck here, with a lot of automation included, including the Garmin G3000 avionics, which make this fully IFR capable. And apart from that, we do have just a little bit of basic stuff here. Communications, lights, landing gear, flaps, air conditioning and pressurization. Down here we have our engine and power controls. And then we have the trims and some cockpit lights, and that's it already. So it's a pretty simplistic aircraft from the inside. Now, the cockpit layout matches the real one. The flight instruments slightly different because there is no publicly available information on the flight instruments fitted to this aircraft at the moment. For this reason they went with a G3000, which would be somewhat of a logical fit. Now, the real-world aircraft made a single flight to date, which was an 8-minute flight of the prototype November 882 Echo Victor, the one that is included in this add-on. Now, the add-on is going to release for a price of about 19 euros, and it's going to be released pretty soon. Okay, so first of all though, let's go ahead and head inside once again, because we do also have an electronic flight bag coming with this one, and this is what the main page looks like. What's really important over here is that you have that flight planner available. So the flight planner is basically going to calculate how much power you need for the aircraft to fly. And with power I don't mean takeoff thrust or something, but I mean battery power. Remember, this airplane is completely powered electrically. Now, we are going to look at that in a short flight in a few moments, but first let's go over the other options we have available. The next one is the airplane menu, and over here you can do several things like opening or closing the doors, or putting chocks in place. But what's really nice, you can also plug the airplane into a charging port. Now, those of you who have an electrical car will probably be familiar with this, but let's go over here. Let's call the charger and go right over there, and here it is. And now, in order to be able to use this, first of all, let's go ahead and open that door down here. And then we got to select, okay, so how much power do we actually want? And I really like down here that you can change between the charging power used. Remember, the faster you charge, the or the stronger the wear on the batteries, so you can kind of make your own choice there. But in order to avoid you having to wait several hours while your airplane is charging, you can use a little bit of acceleration on that down here as well. Really neat conceivement over here. And for us today, in order to determine how much power we actually need, let's go right into the cockpit once again, and let's just find out. So we are currently standing in Bern, which is the capital of Switzerland. No, it's not Zurich, unlike many seem to think. And this is the scenery included in the world update. Now we are going to make a quick flight of about half an hour over the Alps down to Lugano, which is also included in Extra Flight Simulator as a handcrafted and very well looking airport. Okay, so we start with the flight planner over here. Our departure is going to be from Lima Sierra Zulu Bravo, and our destination Lima Sierra Zulu Alpha. Our distance of flight is going to be about 120 nautical miles, and we can either have them calculate our cruising altitude automatically, or we can do that stuff manually. Now, we'll carry 2 passengers, the other way around. We carry 6 passengers and 2 crew. And we are going to carry 3 bags as well. Now, if we just click load down here, then it automatically calculates things like the altitude, the flight time, but it also calculates the power you will need on your batteries in order to do that flight. Now, let's just go slightly back over here and change our cruising altitude, because we are flying over the Alps with the emphasis on over and not into it. German first officer, I know, but hey. Okay, so let's go ahead and load that stuff up, and here we can now see we'll need 433 kilowatt hours of power on the batteries. Now, if you look here, you can see our climb power, our cruise power, and then you will notice the descent power, which is 0. Now, we'll talk about the reason for that as we get into the flight. To put it bluntly, this is not your conventional aircraft engine. This works completely different from what you're used to. And it is going to be really interesting to explain that later on. But for now, this is our conceived flight path over here. Apart from that, the EFB also features checklists, which we have over here. This is all the normal checklists of the aircraft that we have. And then it also features Navigraph charts, which I do really appreciate. So let's go ahead. We need charts for Zulu Bravo over here, Bern, where we are departing. The only thing is, they don't seem to intercept the keyboard input, so as you type something in, you can see that, for example, pressing the L button is going to activate our lights here. So that's hopefully something that they are going to improve in the future. But remember, this is a beta version of a pre-release copy. But over here we do have our Navigraph charts, which is really handy. Next up, we have a note button, and over here we can basically just draw our own notes, and I can make myself some self-advertisement over here. And don't I just write really beautifully with a mouse? Wonderful, isn't it? Anyway, this is pretty neat in order to set up, for example, some descent calculations or stuff, even though you will probably not need to do that manually, because we do have the G3000 here. Now, last but not least, we do have a manual as well, and if you click on here, you're just going to get the QR code to download the aircraft's manual, which is pretty handy. Includes a little bit of basic stuff about our aircraft. Okay, let's now go ahead and have a look at the outside of this plane. And as you can see, we've got the battery charger in place there already. Now, for today's flight, I'm just going to make it easy, and we are really just going to charge it all the way up. So, if we just go there one more time, go to the charger. We can start the charging process by plugging the charger in. Here we go. And you can see now it's starting to charge. Now, it's just going to charge all the way up. You can see 24 minutes here is the remaining time, but we can go ahead and change that. For example, to go to hyperfast over here, now we need 12 minutes to charge the battery completely up. If you don't want to wait while your aircraft is charging, you can always just go into the electronic flight bag. And if you go onto the settings down here, you could immediately charge the battery as required. But I do find this quite cool, to be honest. Okay, so that stuff out of the way, let's go ahead and do a little walk around and appreciate the model of the aircraft that we have gotten. So we'll just start right over here at the entrance door, which of course can be opened. More on that in a few moments. Of course, it is an experimental aircraft, so that is on here without any doubt about it. Pitot probes in the front and very sleek looking lines overall, really have to say that. Unfortunately, the real one, once it is going to be delivered, is going to look a little bit worse, because they are redesigning the fuselage at the moment. The Aton is based on the version that flew in 2022, but now they are somewhat redesigning it for a new prototype that is going to look a little bit more like a conventional aircraft. But I think the choice of the designer, LivtoAir, over here is really neat, because this just looks really cool. And it did fly after all. Okay, so a little look at the nose wheel over here. This is what it looks like. Landing lights are located there as well. Then moving along the aft part of the aircraft, we do have our... no, sorry, that's the landing lights over here. The one in the front were the taxi lights, of course. So, getting down to the main wheels, again, good modeling, and something I really do appreciate. If we just look up here into the gear bay, you can see that there is quite a couple of lines and stuff hidden in there. So really cool, even though this is an area that most of you are probably never going to see. I find it really nice that this stuff is now modeled as well. So the wing itself, clean design over here, looking for a laminar flow. But nonetheless, all the stuff that does actually exist on there, like the lights over here, we can see have a really good level of detail. So let's move along the aft side of the wing. Over here we are currently charging our airplane. Air inlet over here for the pressurization system, and then we get to our engine. Now, those propellers do spin in the wind, and one thing that I do really like is that when the propellers are not creating any thrust, but when they are just spinning in the wind, then the engines are actually reversed and work as a generator. So that way, your power is actually charging in flight, which is quite cool, isn't it? Nonetheless, you might be wondering, okay, so if this is an all-electric engine, why do we have an air inlet down here, and why do we have an air outlet back here? Well, of course, friction is created, so cooling is needed, and it is an electrical motor. Those things do get pretty hot. So that's why we still have air inlets over here. Classical T-tail configuration. The first prototype was convinced as a V-tail, but they have since moved to the T-tail. The reasons for that are not known in public, but they will probably have some thoughts that went into this. Alright, last but not least, we do have some cargo doors here in the back, and even more cargo can be loaded inside the aircraft. And talk about the inside, how about we go there and take a look at our cabin now. So, first things first, we are going to have a little look over here. So this is the door of the airplane, can be operated like a door. And something that I do like about this aircraft, if we close it down right over here and look at it from the outside, then we can also operate it through the mechanism that we have located down here. So that's quite nice. Alright, back into the cabin. This is what it looks like. This is the luxury version of the plane. There is also a 9-seat commuter version or cargo version available. And the cargo version seems to be the one that's really getting the most attraction from potential customers in the real world at this moment. So this is what the version of the aircraft looks like. We can extend the tables over here, which is quite cool. And apart from that, it's a rather simplistic cabin at this moment. Moving further back though, we do have a door over here. So if we do open that up, you can see it does have a toilet. And of course we've got our wash basin over here as well. And we even have our bins. Now, congratulations if you're going to use those, but okay. Next up, we do have our cargo compartment back in here, as you can see. Nicely brought to life with a couple of items in it. And looks like we are going shopping today, so let's go ahead and let's not keep our ladies up any further. And much rather make our way down towards Lugano, shall we? Okay, so A lot of that good stuff is done. Let's quickly go to the back of the airplane and disconnect that charger. I think our airplane is charged more than enough now, so let's go to the charger over here, 91% on board. And, well, look at that cost of the power. So, overall, filling it up completely is going to cost us a couple $100. If you compare that with, you know, your typical King Air or whatever, that's going to cost a little bit more. So, it does save a little bit of money after all. But okay, that stuff now set aside. Let's disconnect the charger down here, close up the door, and that's it. So with that, back into the flight deck, and then we can remove the charger from here as well. Likewise, our parking brake is currently set, so we can move the chocks as well. And last but not least, let's go ahead and close the door. Here we go. Alright, so, as we're about to power our aircraft up, some of you might be wondering, we didn't hear any sounds just yet. I did not just forget to record my simulator sounds, it actually was that quiet. So things like the doors would be very nice if there was a sound attached to that or the table. But now that we're about to flick a couple of switches, you can hear it, there are sounds attached to that. Okay, so let's go ahead and take out our checklist over here. So, startup checklist. Chocks, well, they are removed already. Flight Planner app is done, weights are set. So, battery, hidden nicely behind the side stick over here, is coming on. And avionics, located down here next to the battery switch, are on. So, battery system synoptic page. Open. Okay, battery 2 and 3% check. So, as you can see, we've got 3 batteries fitted to the aircraft. Number 1, 2, and 3. Number 1 is what powers the entire aircraft systems in here. Number 2 and 3 power engines 1 and 2 respectively. So what do? We check that we've got sufficient power available in the battery systems. And once we're in flight, we do get a little bit of useful information here, like the range the engine can produce based on that power and so on. But we'll check that out in flight. Okay, so our battery percentages are checked, air conditioning as needed. Now, air conditioning, well, it is a rather hot day today here in Switzerland, so I am going to turn the air conditioning on the low setting, and that is what brings up our sounds a little bit here. Alright, avionics, configure. So, standard G3000 from working title that we can find in here. I am going to do things manually here, so LSZB. I'm not going to just import the SimBrief profile. Talk about SimBrief, there is currently no SimBrief profile available for this, but I kind of like to use aircraft that are similar in terms of performance. So for example, you can use the Cessna 414 to get a similar flight time and stuff like that. So there's that. Now let's go for the procedures, departure, and we are going to depart today via the, what's it called again? Monin 3 Bravo departure. So Monin 3 Bravo, here it is. We're going to load that one up. And our arrival into Lugano is going to be via the Odina 8 Lima. We're expecting runway 01 today. Okay, load that one up as well. And last but not least, we need the approach. And for that we are going to use the GPS 01 in here from Caldo. Load that as well, and here we go. Okay, beautiful. So, we do have a couple of pages that we can configure over here. Something that I do really like to do is to go over to the PFD, and I do like to bring my charts up over here. So we're departing Bern, so let's go for the our ground chart over here. And then we can go over to our other multifunction displays. And over here, let's go ahead and pull up our departure chart. I do really like the fact that it automatically selects the right departure for you. It's a really neat feature. Okay, so as you can see, initial climb altitude 5,000. Set, then our SID takes us straight ahead to 5,000 feet, then a right hand turn, Zulu Bravo 200, maximum speed 180 above 7,000, and we can see that exactly down here. And thereafter we continue via waypoint 527 above 11,000, which we have, and then it's going to be waypoint 210 above 16,000, and then towards Monin. And 16,000 does happen to be our cruising altitude here as well. Okay, so that's our flight plan checked and loaded up, and last but not least, I am going to go over here. We don't want the traffic map, but we do want our navigation display. Obviously, we can change these things around later in flight, which is really nice. Those avionics just are really cool sets of hardware. Alright, so that stuff done. Avionics are configured, autopilot is configured, pressurization set cruising altitude. So we have that one over here. We're cruising at 16,000 today, so let's just dial that up right over here. A little bit higher, doesn't matter, so 17 it is. Okay, pressurization set. So, nav, beacon and anti-collision lights. Well, I'm going to turn on the nav and the beacon, but not the anti-collision, because that one kind of works as a strobe light over here. On. Alright, and with that comes our engine start. Now, engine start in this airplane is quite different from what you would expect at first. So the engine start in here, let's go ahead and do it. Battery 2 and 3 on. So those are located down here below the power levers. Remember those are the batteries that power the engines. And then power 1 and 2 engage on. So this is the engine start now. Let me just turn air conditioning off here again so that we can actually hear it. And that's it. That's our engines running. Now if you look at the gauges, you will notice that there is 0 power and 0 RPMs. And if we do go outside, you will see exactly the same thing. Now that's the cool thing here. These are electric engines. That means there is no idle power or anything that we need. If you go to idle, the propellers stop. Unless you're in the air and have the airflow, then the airflow is going to turn the propellers, and then the engines actually work as generators and charge up the batteries in flight. Quite cool. Alright, so that's our engines running. So let's go ahead and turn the air conditioning back on again. And with all of that out of the way, I do suggest we are going to get going over here. One last thing that I want to do though, let's go to aircraft systems, and then we take the status page, I believe it is. Over here you can see what our air conditioning system is doing, and I don't want 16 degrees in here. Let's make it 21, shall we? So we've got a control down here. There we go, 21 degrees set, and that's it. Alright, wonderful. So that good stuff is done. I do suppose we're going to get ready to taxi now. So that's our startup checklist complete. Taxi checklist. Chocks. Just to be 100% sure, did I remove them? Yes, I did. No chocks in place over here. So chocks removed, thrust mode taxi, and that's what we can find down here. So thrust mode set to the left towards taxi. So taxi light on, and flaps takeoff located over here. Set to takeoff, and we do a flap indicator over here. So those flaps are set. Okay, taxi checklist complete. So runway 32 is going to be our departure runway. Taxi straight ahead over here via Kilo all the way to Foxtrot, and then we take the full length for our departure. So parking brake released, and now watch it as I'm going to add a little bit of thrust. Engines are in idle. Now I'm adding thrust, and the engines do start rotating. It's completely different from your standard aircraft engine that you might be used to. But that's an electrical aircraft, my friends. While we're taxiing out, let's just take a moment to appreciate the scenery here as well. This one is from the World Updates, the Bern scenery here, which I do really like. I mean, well, let's admit it, this is looking really cool, isn't it? This could easily be a $20 payware airport here. And you not only have your standard... You not only have your standard general aviation stuff over here, that can actually operate airliners into here. Well, that was interesting grammar there. Airliners can actually operate into here. Things like Dash 8s, for example. And I just went back to idle power. You can see the engine stop again. Because, as mentioned, there is no idle that you would need for some sort. It's all electric. It's electric motors. It's really easy to control the taxi speed here. A little bit of power. Then you pull them back to idle. And the plane just goes really nicely. Okay, so we go to the full length. And then it's going to be a takeoff on runway 32. The SID leads straight out to 5,000. And then it's going to be a right-hand turn out. Now, you will be surprised at the amount of power this aircraft can generate. Talk about the power, we might just want to talk a little bit about our engine instruments over here before we're actually going to take off. So parking brake set, taxi light off. Now, if you look at the engine gauges, you can see two gauges up here. We do have our RPMs, and you might notice that those can read 0 as well. Now, and actually negative. That's because if they do turn the opposite way around, then those engines act as generator and start charging up. So you can see negative indications on the engine gauges, and that is completely normal over here. Now, our primary power setting is by setting the kilowatts at which the engines run. The RPMs are going to be determined completely automatically. As you can see, we only have a single power lever located down here. So that's the way these engines are operated. Down below you see the SOC, which is basically the charging or the amount of power that's left in your batteries, 92% at the moment. And then you have the range and the energy that you need per 100 nautical miles. We're going to play with that in flight. Also, you have the flight time remaining, but that needs to be taken with a little bit of grain of salt here, but we'll talk about that once we're in flight. Alright, so with that, let's do the takeoff checklist. So, taxi light off, landing lights on, thrust mode as required, and we are going to use power mode over here. And last but not least, set takeoff power. Well, that's kind of self-explanatory, so there's that. Okay, so that is our setup done. Let's release our parking brake, line up, and off we go. No need to backtrack, we've got more than sufficient power available for our aircraft. Okay, here we are. So, very quick briefing through our takeoff. Number 1, give me that full nav display. Number 2, we can turn to the departure chart on the PFD, which I do really like. Number 3, I want to call up the flight plan down here. That's a leftover from my airline operation. I'm not going to get off that. Let's synchronize the heading bug, and then here we go. So, it's quite easy. You put your power lever all the way to the maximum, and you can basically leave it there. There's no climb thrust settings or stuff like that. You can just leave it on full power. Really easy. So, anti-collision light on. Timers. Start. And then take off. So, maximum power is set. Very good acceleration here. Those are some pretty strong engines. Okay, 90 knots, rotate. 12.5 degrees of pitch seems to work pretty nicely after takeoff. And then we have a positive rate, gear up. Okay, nav. Let's engage the autopilot at vertical speed at first. And I am just going to let the autopilot fly the initial part of the sit here, so that we can focus on a couple of the other things. So autopilot on, give me those 2,000 feet a minute please. And as we have reached our acceleration altitude, we can now use 1,000, flaps up. Okay, and all that good stuff out of the way, let's go level change. 180 knots is the speed target. And that is going to be our climb power setting. But let's go all the way up to cruising altitude here, looking for flight level 160. Set. So, transition altitude at 6,000. Over there we gotta set standard altimeters. Well, and with that we're up and in the air. So what does it look like from the outside? It's neat, isn't it? I really do appreciate this type of aircraft. Also very nice graphics down here. That's the world update for you guys. This is just an amazing futuristic looking aircraft, isn't it? Okay, we've passed 5,000, starting our turn towards Zulu Bravo 200. And then we're approaching the transition altitude, set standard. Standard cross-checked, passing flight level 59 now. Okay, so as we're going with full power right now, we get a nice 2,500 feet a minute out of this aircraft, which is quite nice. We have our cabin pressurization indication down here, so the cabin is pressurizing. Something I do find a bit weird though is that we do get a red gear down indication. I don't think that's right, and I did email the developer to ask if that is intentional or if that might need some change there. So that way around, hopefully it's going to be updated in the future. Now, I did get feedback from the developer already, and the version I'm flying at the moment is the initial release version, but the first update is gonna fix that landing gear indication. It should really go black rather than go red over there. Okay, apart from that though, the autopilot's doing a great job and the aircraft is climbing up very nicely. Let's go ahead and do our climb checklist. So gear up, flaps up, power set, and state of charge monitor. And with that we are reaching the 10,000 feet part of the checklist, but we're almost at 10,000 already, so let's just go ahead and do that. So that is landing lights off, and transition level, we've passed it, so altimeters standard, and that's the climb checklist completed. Next up is going to be cruise, which as you can see is not really that complicated either. Okay, so we're up in the air and on our way towards Lugano. As you can see, fairly easy route, more or less straightforward. The climb performance of the aircraft is pretty phenomenal here. 2,800 feet a minute, 2,900 now. Now I did ask the developer, okay, so in terms of your aircraft's performance, what is it actually based on, since the actual aircraft only made one flight and there is probably not a lot of data available? And his reply was that all the flight dynamics of the aircraft are modeled after what the manufacturer said that they want to achieve with the aircraft. So we can see a little bit of basic data of the aircraft over here. These are some of the real-world specifications from the plane. So cruising speed 220 knots true airspeed, service ceiling flight level 320, maximum range 440 miles, and so on. Now, if we do take a look into a couple of the performance specifications we have of the aircraft right within our simulator, then hopefully this is more or less accurate. But there just is no data available of the plane, so they conceived it somewhat around, okay, this is what we might expect it to be like, but let's just face it, this plane is not meant to be a study level aircraft here, much rather it is meant to be a demonstration of the concept of the electrical aircraft. And I do think that most of the stuff over here seems believable. Let's just do 1,000 feet a minute over here for the last 1,000 feet. I do think most of the stuff is somewhat believable. I don't have personal experience with our electric engines though. Something I do find nice is that you can change the position of the electronic flight back in the cockpit. So, where's the next position? Somewhere down here. You can put it somewhere down here. Yep, here you go. So you can take it off the windows if you want to. You can put it on the side. You can put it on the front, which is quite neat when you're working down here in your flight plan. And that's the different options you have for that. Let's put it down here now, since we're currently in cruise flight and don't really need it. So once we've leveled off at our cruising altitudes, I will just keep the power on maximum and we'll have the aircraft accelerate for a little bit. And thereafter we are going to have a look into a couple of the interesting features of those electric engines and the way they behave. So we've leveled off at flight level 160 right now. Let's just keep the power on maximum and see what kind of speed we can achieve with that. You can see right now we're on Mach 0.48, but our true airspeed is already 310 knots. You might remember from those specifications that I've just shown you that the aircraft is advertised with a cruising speed of 220 knots true airspeed rather than 320. That's true, and you will see the reason why in a few moments. So once our speed has stabilized here, it is going to stabilize at around about 250 indicated, 320 knots true airspeed, maybe 330 depending on the conditions. You can see we're currently in ISA standard plus 10, which generally deteriorates our aircraft performance a little bit. But around about 320, 330 knots true airspeed is what we're going to get over here, which makes it quite similar to your average TBM 800 or TBM 930. Now, the only problem with flying that quickly is what we can see down here. So you can see we're down to a battery load of 77% right now, but our range is only 220 nautical miles. The energy per 100 nautical miles is now 445 kilowatt hours, and if the aircraft runs at this power, our flight time is only 40 minutes. So in 40 minutes we'll be out of fuel. Or out of electricity, I should say. Now, if we just reduce that power a little bit, in order to get a cruising speed that's a little bit more appropriate, you can now see our maximum speed somewhere around 330 knots true airspeed down here. But let's go ahead and reduce our power a little bit to something that might be a little bit, let's call it, a little bit more appropriate. You can see down here our energy per 100 nautical miles has immediately decreased by about 25%. Now, this is going to go up a little bit again as the aircraft slows down, but our flight time has increased significantly already, and our range has increased by 100 miles as well. So, this airplane really shouldn't be flown at the maximum speed. You can do it for very short flights only, but you are going to drain those batteries quickly. Those of you who drive an electric car will be very familiar with that kind of behavior. If you go up to the high speeds, your range just really goes down and down and down. You really got to fly it, or drive it, close to the optimum. This is no different between an electric plane and an electric car. Now here comes the very nicest part of the flight, going across those Alps over here. MSA is 16,000, we're flying exactly right up there at the MSA. Really neat. I do really enjoy doing these low-level flights over the Alps. Now, before we are going to start our descent and our approach, how about we just have a look into the manual flight characteristics of the aircraft. No EFB. Stay down there. So, first of all though, our aircraft has stabilized at a cruising speed of 300 knots now, and we're now using 1000 kilowatts on our power, and you can see the range is now 275 miles, so quite increased from the previous 220 nautical miles. So don't fly too fast, it's not gonna end too well. Fly it at the speed that it's designed for. Okay, how about we have a look into some of the manual flight characteristics now. Let's go autopilot off. And I will also put the flight director off and the yaw damper off at this point. And we're just going to make a little bit of basic airwork here. So, should probably not do that exactly on top of the mountains, but hey, I don't care too much, huh? Very sleek looking aircraft though. I do really like the looks. This is futuristic, exactly as they designed it. Alright, so for a little bit of basic airworks now. Let's start with a left-hand turn here, 30 degrees angle of bank, while maintaining our altitude. So this is like the most basic maneuver that you can fly in an airplane like this. And as you can see, very easy to do. Let's go 45 degrees of bank. So this already counts as a steep turn now. And once again, fairly easy to just maintain our altitude and keep our airplane flying. You can see that the speed is dropping a little bit, which is of course expected since our wing loading is increasing here. Now let's try 60 degrees of bank. And this is round about the maximum that an aircraft, or that a civil aircraft should be able to take while maintaining altitude, because this is already a 2G loading right now. You really shouldn't do much more than this. But I have increased the power a tiny bit and we are able to keep our speed nicely, so very easy to control over here. Let's go ahead and bring it right back on course, then we're going to do the same to the right side, and that is going to conclude our roll test over here. By the way, talk of roll, this is the maximum roll rate with the maximum stick input. In my opinion, I would have expected a tiny bit stronger roll rate here. But then again, this is of course just what the developer has conceived there as well, since he didn't have any actual data on the roll rate of this aircraft. But I do have a feeling that, at least compared to, you know, your standard Aquila or Airbus A320 or Airbus A330, you need a rather large stick input here in order to be able to fly the plane properly. So let's just go ahead and see that from the outside here for a second. Quite incredible, isn't it? I do really like that. Very nice glacier down here as well. Okay, so maximum aileron input here. This is what the plane rolls like. So it's not exactly a fighter jet. That much I can tell you. But then again, it's probably not going to kill you unless it burns down like the first prototype actually did. So there's always that. In terms of rates of climb and rates of descent, you can fly the plane really precisely. Let's do 1,000 feet a minute down. As you can see, I'm very easily able to achieve that. Let's just descend past the level 160 over here and do 1,000 feet up afterwards. And you will see that it's just as easy to climb in this one as it is to descend. So very friendly handling over here. Let's do 1,000 up now. And well, here we go. As you can see, very easy to fly precisely and very well controllable. Okay, let's go ahead and go back down to flight level 160 now, and then we can turn the automatics back on. So my feedback on the manual handling qualities of the aircraft is that, in my opinion, it could be a little bit more responsive, but then again, I don't have that experience on an airplane like this either, so it's just my general flight experience here that would say a little bit more responsiveness would be nice, but we'll see about it. Okay, autopilot back on. Let's level off at flight level 160 once again. FMS navigation is enabled. Pull the power. Around about 1,000 kilowatts over here. And now let's talk about a couple of the other systems we have on board. So first things first, if we have a look at the status page of the aircraft, you can see right here it already has a little bit of problems maintaining our cabin temperature. Now, that does make sense, because it is, of course, an electrical heating over here, and it does get rather cold outside during the time. So we have -8 degrees over here. It's going to get much colder when you climb to even higher altitudes. But what can you do about it? Well, you can see that you have 3 different settings for your air conditioning. We're on low right now. Can go up to medium, which very nicely changes the sounds as well. And if you really need it, you've got a high mode as well. But the airplane does get really loud over here. So let's go back to medium. I think that's going to be all we need to keep the temperatures at a decent level. Apart from that, we do have some basic electrical information up here, which is kind of similar to the same thing that we have on the primary engine instruments on the ICAS. Next up, we got the flight control page, which just is basic flight controls here. Nothing surprising. Next up, we have our electrical page. And this is the general overview of the buses we've got in the aircraft. So you can see our engine buses are feeding the battery 2 and battery 3 bus. But prior to that, the engines directly provide power to the lights and to the flight controls, I believe. Apart from that, through the batteries, or through the battery buses, we feed our batteries, and that feeds the battery number 1, which in turn feeds the avionics, so the cockpit. That's the basic electrical system of the aircraft. Our battery page itself gives us a little bit of information on the system itself, but what's really interesting here is the right hand side. So you've got the lifetime of the battery, you've got the battery health, which checks itself, and you will probably know that from your average, you know, from your average phone. The batteries do wear out over time, and they do simulate that. Quite neat, isn't it? So, apart from that, the lifetime of the battery also tells you how long you have operated the plane for already. So you can see battery 1, remember, powers the avionics system. That's been in use for 1 hour and 40 minutes already. So you can see that prior to recording this flight, I have done a little bit of research into some of the techniques flying the plane, and flew it a bit. The engines on the other hand side have been running for about 1 hour and 24 minutes now. Last charged 1 hour and 11 minutes ago. Okay, did they say so? Probably the time that it's been charged for, huh? I don't know. Okay, then we've got our engines. So thrust mode, well, we could change that into range. That is going to increase our range slightly. As you can see, it's 320 miles now. So power gives you maximum power. Range gives you more efficiency. Of course, at the cost of a slightly reduced airspeed. But we do want to take this. So it's 320 miles now, 1 hour and 5 minutes. But remember that we can charge our battery again once the aircraft is in the descent. So that 1 hour and 5 minutes here is actually going to improve if you pull the engines to idle in the descent. We'll see that in action a little bit later. Last but not least, we have our engine information down here, where we've got the current power that each of those engines consumes. We have the torque, which would be something that you would be more used to from a conventional aeroplane. And last but not least, the lifetime of the engines down here, which is for how long they have operated so far. It's not when they're going to die, but how long they've operated. Last but not least, we do have a lighting configuration over here, and that simply changes the brightness of our screens themselves. Alright, and this is the kind of information we've got available in here. Let's go back to a full screen display, and as you can see, we are already slowly approaching our top of descent here, coming up in 10 nautical miles. So let's just go down into our settings and do our VNAV setup over here. So top of descent in 2 minutes flight time, scheduled speed 225 knots. And over here we could change those schedules, but I'm just going to leave them over here where they are default, and then we do a little bit of manual work on it later on. So let's go ahead and get out our arrival charts. So, Lugano, arrival, and this is it right up here, joining the Odina 8 Lima arrival right now. We're gonna fly right over the field and then outbound towards Caldo. And from Caldo, we are going to join the IGS approach for runway 01. You can see from Caldo, we do start procedure turn here, outbound to 90 me from the ILS. Then a left-hand turn, back inbound, where we're going to join the ILS approach. Now, starting at Caldo outbound 6,000 feet, and thereafter towards inbound to Caldo again in 5,000, we intercept our vertical profile. The minimum today, we have a fairly good go-around gradient, so we can use 2,150 here with a 9% gradient. Let's go ahead and set that one up already. So, minimums borrow 2,150. Insert. Okay, so here's our vertical profile coming in. Let's go ahead and dial down the altitude so that we can start our descent. Well, 6,000 is the next restriction along our route, so let's go ahead and go down to 6,000 straight away. Set. VNAV is armed. Okay, what else do we need? Probably a couple of frequencies. So 108.9, and that is going to go active into the radio. So 1089 active and 1089 going active. Beautiful. And that's mostly it. So now we're in the descent, and you have two different options. You can either keep your power applied and the aircraft is going to go fast, or you can pull your power to idle and now have a look at what's going to happen. Now you can see the power goes negative, because the stream of the airflow now keeps our propellers turning, and therefore the electric motors that have previously driven the engines now act as generators and are now actually charging our batteries again. So that's our destination right down there. But as you can see, when you do this, when you do go to idle power over here, then the aircraft does get somewhat slow, but I think that's okay. That's a nice trade-off if you do actually generate fuel over here, something that's previously not been possible in aviation with the chemical fuels used on other aircraft, but with electrical fuels this is definitely possible now. Really nice, really nice. Okay, good. So that's our approach charts studied. Let's go right back onto our nav display over here, and what we're going to do is obviously select our charts on the left side here. So Lugano approach IGS-01. Here we go, that's what we need. Alright, beautiful. So that's this part of the setup complete. Let's go ahead and do our checklists now. So cruise was done, then we have our descent checklist. Thrust mode as required, I'm going to keep it in range for now. Power as required, idle, state of charge monitor. Okay, transition level, well, we are descending to an altitude, so set QNH. QNH 1019, cross-check passing 19,040 now. Checked. Okay, QNH set, and at 10,000 feet, which we're about to reach, landing lights on, and that is our descent checklist complete, so landing is going to be next. So very easy to fly aircraft. Now, if you do want to use your displays for different purposes here, then remember, you do have Navigraph charts available on here as well. So you can always just look at them over here if you want to. So IGS-01, we might as well just open it over here on the nav display. Oh, sorry, on our tablet. If we do that, we could, for example, go to the full PFD view over here, get rid of the charts. That also brings the traffic display into view if you want to look at it. Quite useful if you ask me, so definitely something you should consider. Okay, I have a feeling we might need to increase our rate of descent here a little bit, so let's do 2,500 feet a minute. And of course I forgot to dial down the altitude, so here we go. What's the field elevation? 900. So something like this. Alright, let's see. Our cabin got a descent 3,000 feet a minute. That means it needs 6 minutes. Yeah, we still have those till touchdown, so easy going. Okay, vertical path is captured again. We can descend 5,000 as per the approach chart. Inbound to Caldo now. We should cross Phoenix above 6, but you can see the plane does that automatically up here anyway. Okay, and down there is our runway. It is definitely a little bit of a steep approach, so let's go flaps takeoff. So that we can start increasing our drag over here. And we do definitely need that drag. What is it, 4.5 degrees I believe? No, 6.7 degrees. Okay, so a little bit steeper than I thought. Okay, let's switch over. Loc 1. Approach armed. Localizer capture. Okay, vertical speed, minus 1000. Glide slope is alive. Gear down. And now the challenge is to get that speed down into the wideband so that we can set our landing flaps. And we got to do that before we capture the glide slope, otherwise we are not going to be able to reduce our speed anymore. And this is not exactly the terrain where you can do an orbit on final. But here we go. Speed's in the wide band. Flaps landing. Air conditioning back to low. And our cabin altitude is coming down nicely. Looking good. Glide slope capture. Go around altitude
2,500.
Tracked. And go around altitude 6,000 set. Okay, established on the IGS approach. Definitely not certified for it, but let's not bother with that kind of stuff. And if you do take a look at the battery down there, you can see it's actually charging. The power is filling up again, as we're flying this all with idle power. Just wonderful. This is probably the future of aviation, guys. Okay, let's keep the speed at 90 knots over here. We do need a bit of power again now. I just love how steep this looks. I mean, take a look outside. That's our runway right up there. Let's also see it from the passenger's perspective here, shall we? Here it is. It must be somewhat of a strange view for the passenger to look outside the front and, you know, see the plane pitch down like that. But, contrary to the average flight simmer's opinion, this is not all too much of a problem. Really neat, isn't it? That's got to be a very nice waterfall over here as well, isn't it? I do like it. I do like it. Now, on the front seat. This must look really interesting. Feeling the forces as you're getting pressed into the seat here on an approach like this. Or if you have this view, that must be interesting as well. Okay, we're approaching the minimum. I have a feeling we should get back into doing our job over here. So, autopilot off, yaw damper off, flight director off. Let's go below the profile and try to fly ourselves into a proper puppy down there. I really don't know if the puppy should be aligned over here.
1000.
Checked. Because the puppy shows us 4 whites. Even though we were definitely on the glide slope. I have a feeling they calibrated the puppy to a 3-degree slope rather than the 6.7 degrees that it actually is. Really neat scenery here as well, isn't it? This is all standard Microsoft. Well, handcrafted, of course.
400.
Okay, getting into the puppies. Here we are.
300.
90 knots is looking good.
200.
Very easy to fly on the approach. Very gentle aircraft,
100.
very forgiving.
100.
You said that.
50. 40.
Okay, power idle.
30. 20.
Flare.
10.
And we're done. So, welcome to Lugano. We'll just let it roll out over here. We do have a turn pad right at the end of the runway where we can start the backtrack. But just to demonstrate you, this is maximum manual braking now. You can see it is really effective here. You can slow it down much quicker if you want to. I just don't see any reason to actually do so. Also really nice to monitor as we're getting slower and the slipstream across the engines reduces. Our power is slightly going up again because the engines are obviously not charging that well anymore. Okay, thrust mode taxi. Then let's do a 180-degree turn over here. This is maximum rudder input now. Really effective. You can turn the plane on a very small spot if you really want to. And with that, let's go right to the apron. Okay, well that was done, of course. After landing checklist, thrust modes, taxi, flaps, up. So, landing lights, off, anti-collision lights, off, taxi lights, on, after landing checklist complete. Okay, so, one last very nice feature in the Navigraph charts. If you go to the moving map and synchronize the position, here you are. I like that feature. I really do like that feature. Especially if you put them up here or something. Well, a little hard to read. The side is good. But you get the general idea here. Okay, let's vacate that runway. And then we can taxi straight to the apron. Okay, that was about 32 minutes flight time, including those couple of circles that we did. So overall, for 100 nautical miles distance, I would say we would have done it in maybe 27 minutes or something. So that's quite a good speed for an aircraft like this. Obviously, if you are looking for maximum range, 440 miles, then you do want to fly it a little bit slower. It can do about 2 hours flight time just nicely to reach the maximum range. So that's really good. Now, if we do look at the battery charging at the moment, we can see it's still at 59%. So basically, we started our descent, I believe, at 52%. So we've actually charged it up quite a little bit here, even though that's just some 5 or 10 minutes flight time that we've gained over here. But it's still quite a bit. Alright then, let's go ahead and park it somewhere over here. really responsive engines here. You add a little bit of power and the plane responds straight away. Okay, here we are. Taxi light coming off. Then let's just bring it up to the stop bar, and we're going to stop it right over there. Okay, here we are. So, park and brake is set. Let's do the shutdown checklist, please. So, power engines 1 and 2. Off. Battery 2 and 3 engages. Off. Chocks. We'll do those later. All lights off. Avionics off. And I'll turn the air conditioning off here as well. Okay, and battery off. And that's it. Our first flight in an all-electric aircraft is now completed. So let's go ahead and open up those doors. And maybe most importantly, we gotta go and grab the ladies' handbags, as we're about to go shopping, it seems. Alright, welcome to Lugano, everyone. Definitely very interesting aircraft, the Eviation Alice. Now, as I mentioned, the prototype only did a single flight here, but it is supposed to go into scheduled commercial service in 2027, so the aircraft is probably going to fly very soon. Mostly with cargo operators initially. There's over 200 orders from many of them, including, for example, DHL. So we are very likely to see this type of aircraft in our skies in the near future. Of course, this is a concept add-on, so it's definitely no study level over here, and in terms of system depth, well, it's somewhere in the medium range here. The working title G3000 really gives it good IFR capabilities though, so I'm really happy you can do proper flying with it. In my opinion, for a price of around about 19 euros, I believe it's 18.99 or something the likes, really worth checking out and giving a look to if you're interested in just seeing this concept type of aircraft in action, and if you're interested to see what electric aviation might look like in the future. So overall, how would I rate the aircraft? Well, in terms of the sounds, it's pretty hard to judge what kind of sounds they actually do produce. The engines are located rather far in the back. The only thing that I was really missing here was some sort of wind sounds in the cockpit in flight, so that you actually have a little bit more sounds than just the electric air conditioning that's fitted to the aircraft by standard. So some wind sounds would be nice. Apart from that, the impression is kind of okay, I would say. Engine sounds did make a good impression after all. Now, flight dynamics, hard to judge since I have really no idea what this type of aircraft might fly like. One thing I can say is you've got rather wide wings and rather large ailerons located here on the outside of the wings, so I could imagine it to be rather maneuverable. The version in the simulator, however, does need quite a lot of aileron input. No problem to fly it, but when compared with other aircraft, it does need quite a lot of aileron input. The elevator axis, perfectly steerable, and as you could see by those steep turns we've done in flight, the overall aircraft does fly in a very controllable and nice manner there. Now, overall, would I recommend you to get this one? Yeah, I probably would, because it's just a very interesting concept over here. And of course you can't expect something like this to be study level. The aircraft manufacturers themselves don't even know yet what the aircraft is going to perform like. But I think this is a very nice one if you're interested in this kind of flying, and if you're just interested into seeing one version of what the future of aviation might possibly look like. Thank you very much for watching, everyone, and thank you very much to our developer over here, LivtoAir, for providing me with the free version of the aircraft for review purposes. All of that said, I would like to say thank you very much for watching. Hope to see you all again on the next one. In the meantime, be sure to like, comment and subscribe, and if you really like what I'm doing on this channel, I would appreciate a small donation through the Buy Me Coffee link in the video description below. Thank you very much for watching, and I see you all again on the next one.